Hi, my name is Graham Barrett. Thanks for downloading the latest episode of the C-Suite podcast, produced in partnership with Making the Leap, the innovative grassroots societal change charity that transforms the futures of young people from less advantaged socioeconomic backgrounds in the UK. On this show, we're going to be discussing the importance of social mobility and the steps that companies and organisations can take to ensure genuine opportunities for all, no matter what their background. For this discussion, I'm delighted to introduce our guests. Jack McMahon, Global Head of Communities and the PA Foundation at PA Consulting. Kelly Perry, Global Head of Sustainability at CMC Markets. Wumi Eyiangho, Senior Surveyor at CBRE and a Making the Leap Fellow and Vice Chairman of the Fellows Board. And finally, Lucy Pryce, Head of Development at Making the Leap. Welcome to you all. And Lucy, I'd love to come to you for the first question. What does social mobility mean to you, and how does that inform the work you are doing at Making the Leap?
Thanks, Graham. It's great to be here. So for us at Making the Leap, we see good social mobility as about ensuring that everyone has a good standard of living, no matter what your background or occupation. And that can include decent housing, the ability to feed yourself and your family, and also financial security. And then the other part of that is about equality of opportunity, regardless of your parents' background or occupation. So that is about access to education and training opportunities and opportunities for employment in any sector. So for us at Making the Leap, we transform the futures of young people from less advantaged socioeconomic backgrounds in London, as you said, by providing training to raise their aspirations, develop their confidence, skills and outlook, and give them the chance to succeed in their chosen career. And this year we're really delighted to be celebrating our 30th anniversary. So we directly deliver programs to young people aged 11 to 25 in London, and we do that by supporting secondary school students and then young people who have left education, completed their education and are looking to start their career. And all of our programs are around raising their aspirations, developing their soft skills, giving them those valuable employer interactions, and supporting young people into employment with a focus on opportunities to really kickstart their career. And then building on our direct delivery, we also use what we learn to raise awareness about social mobility amongst businesses and UK organisations and encourage them to take action to improve that. And that started in 2017 when we launched the UK Social Mobility Awards, which was the first awards event of its kind. And since then, we've launched various spin-off initiatives. So the Social Mobility Podcast, not to compete with yours, Graham, Social Mobility Podcast, Social Mobility Day, and Social Mobility Seminar. And these are ongoing initiatives throughout the year. And then we also have our research and advocacy work where we support organisations around what social mobility means in their business and sector and publish reports about what social mobility activities happening across the country in business.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much for that, Lucy. And congratulations on your 30th anniversary.
Thank you.
Wumi, let me come to you next. As I said in the intro, you're a Making the Leap Fellow. Could you tell us a little bit about what that actually means and what social mobility means for you?
Yes, of course. So when you start the program, you're known as an associate. And following completion of the workshop, which is called the ACE workshop, stands for Aspirations, Careers and Employability, you then become a fully fledged fellow. So I completed the program in 2017, straight out of university. And I can't not tell the story without talking about the pioneer of the story. So it starts with my mother. My sister finished university. She was studying law. And I think when you go through the educational system, it's you're quite covered, I guess, from what happens outside in the business world. You know, you don't really learn about selling yourself, understanding how business works, and it's not just aptitude that gets you the job. If I'm honest, you have to know how to kind of incorporate certain soft skills when it comes to job interviews. My sister started the program. She was recommended through the job center, and she's a natural born, I would say, introvert. And my mum was so impressed with just I guess the output at the end of the workshop and all the opportunities that she received from the program, and that included getting a job offer, which she was so impressed by. So when it was coming up for myself and my brother, she just said simply, if you don't have a job out of university, guess where you're going? And it was Making the Leap, simple as that. So I started off the program. I would say I was quite charismatic, but I lacked discipline. And it was quite clear to see why I probably wasn't getting as many opportunities as I should have. But more importantly, one thing I learned through the program, not just discipline, and I think was even more important, was I would say that mental enlightenment that I received from finishing the workshop. And I'd say the biggest blocker for me sometimes is not being able to see what you can only kind of achieve what you can see. And there was this powerful moment with Tunde, the founder, where he was talking, he gave us a scenario, gave us a little speech, and he just spoke about how, it's you versus a Cambridge graduate. The Russell Group had a first class, you guys are both in an interview. And he just had us all stand up and ask the question, is he better than you? And we all had to stand up in quite an empowering moment and say, no, he's not. And the biggest thing Tunde was trying to show us is that just because someone else has had different opportunities than you, it doesn't mean he's better than you. And that's coined the phrase I've been saying quite often. It's not ability that separates us, it's opportunity. So once I had that mindset shift, I think my abilities did unlock. And with the diligent training from the staff, that really helped to kind of open the door for a lot of the opportunities I've had since completing the program. And in terms of social mobility, what does that mean to me? Not to be too play a pun on words, but it's mobile. It's changed from when I started working to where I'm now. That began with just having access to opportunities, being able to be exposed to certain spaces, which thankfully enough, Making the Leap gave me that opportunity. One of that being Foxtons, which led to me actually getting my first job. But now, as I'm 5 years into my career, I think social mobility means to me not just access to opportunities, but actually being able to develop and to actually evolve into these senior positions. I think that's critical.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. Some really, inspiring story there as well with your mother. And how often is that the case that the mother is the start of, such journeys? So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Kelly, let's come to you. Welcome to the podcast. And what do you understand by social mobility? I mean, Wumi there was talking about access to opportunity. Is that a big part of it for you? And how important is it within CMC markets?
Yeah, Graham, thank you so much for having me today. And I'm really delighted to be on the podcast here with some people that are very embedded into social mobility as part of their day-to-day. So I'm grateful to be here in amongst some skilled individuals with a lot of knowledge. So thank you. And Wumi, thank you so much for sharing.
My pleasure.
But as an organisation, we know that people from low economic backgrounds or socioeconomic backgrounds where they face more challenges or disadvantaged backgrounds have fewer opportunities to climb the socioeconomic ladder. We also know that there's a challenge there that's faced across those individuals in terms of once they have these opportunities and they are inside organisation, is that growth and development. And a lot of that comes back to how we approach our workplace and what we do. So for us at CMC, we have a real drive inside, and our insight comes from the very top level of our organisation, which is Lord Peter Cruddas, who is our CEO and founder of CMC. And he himself comes from a low economic background, born and raised in East London, which is where I live now. So he was born and raised in the East End, in Shoreditch on a council estate. And he himself now has gone on to be a bit of a poster child for socioeconomic movement and education, because he's gone on to create a very successful business and is now a Lord. And he's written a book as well, which is really exciting, from milkman to Mayfair. So that kind of tells you about his rags to riches story. So if you want to hear the sort of nuts and bolts of what Lord Cruddas has been doing in his career, that's a good book to pick up. But we're really delighted to have that socioeconomic push from the very top of our organisation. And that's why I think it's important that, and we can go into that in a bit more detail later on in the podcast, Graham, but I think actually having that at the leadership level is really important.
Sure, thanks for that. And I love that title, From Milkman to Mayfair. That's a superb title for an autobiography. So thanks for sharing that. Jack, let's come to you. Sorry to leave you to last, but really keen to get your insights here as well. You head up the PA Foundation, as I said in the intro. So tell us about the work you do and why you are so passionate about social mobility.
Thanks, Graham. Well, yeah, I guess I'm really fortunate to lead the PA Foundation and head of communities at PA, but I've also got my own social mobility story as well. So I'm really kind of fortunate to be able to influence the strategy of an organisation. So so I grew up in an ex-mining village in Yorkshire, free school meals kid, failing school, young carer. With a single parent, a mother as well. It's always the mums. So despite what I had a great childhood, but obviously a pretty challenging environment growing up. But I excelled at school. I went to university, graduated from Cambridge, and had a successful career in international development and corporate sustainability. I'm about 15 years into my career. So I guess you could say that I was this product of social mobility, the social mobility mindset, and one of my mantras as a child was that instilled by my mum was, take the opportunities given to you and do better than what I was able to achieve. So I think that is the epitome of a social mobility kind of way of thinking. And so now I'm really fortunate to lead the PA Foundation and head of communities at PA. PA launched the PA Foundation last year with the aim to inspire and develop those people from disadvantaged backgrounds by expanding access to education, skills and careers, and particularly in STEM related fields. And it's all about equitable access to everyone and a real focus on developing human social capital that will lead to better careers and better jobs and ultimately better lives. And there's a few main areas of focus which I think are really important and develop, support people improve their social mobility. And the first one is future-proofing skills. So preparing for those future roles and the changing dynamics of the workplace. We often say, we don't believe AI is going to take away your job. It's going to be somebody operating AI that is going to take your job. So I think just preparing young people for what they might not know in the future, we have a duty to do that. Increasing access to networks. I think often people don't get those access to role models, mentors. If you're from a low-income background, it's really hard to build those aspirations. So really resonate with what Wumi was saying, which you can't be what you can't see. So providing those access to mentors is really important. And the last thing is building confidence and self-esteem. I think if you're from a low-income background, you're often grateful for anything that you get. And we've just wrapped up our Springboard program this last week, which supports young people into work experience at PA. And the kids were so grateful and said, "Thank you so much for this opportunity." And I just had to turn around and say, you do not need to be grateful for this. You deserve this opportunity. And it's not, it's trying to kind of share that with the students and saying, you don't need to be grateful. You're owed this opportunity, and we're really pleased to give it to you. So at the minute with the PA Foundation, we're currently about 20 charity partners. We've distributed £3 million already since we started. So it's something that I'm really proud of, and Making the Leap is one of those organisations, fantastic organisations that we work with in the community to try and make a difference.
Well, Jack, thanks for that. And let me stick with you a minute, because as Kelly said, we're going to look into this issue of social mobility in as much detail as we can during the duration of this podcast. Where do you think we are now? Give us some kind of indication of the current climate. Does social mobility even exist anymore? Is it still achievable? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's such a difficult question. I think we know it's a problem, and we know social mobility or the lack thereof, social mobility in the UK in particular, is a problem. So at the minute, I think we're looking at kind of on par with Switzerland and the United States in terms of how we compare to other countries, and we're quite low in the league tables when it comes to social mobility. But I think we know that the home environment has a significant impact on future outcomes, as well as the education system. But the education system doesn't seem to be this kind of social leveler that we would have hoped it to be. So those on low income, those people from low income households are probably we know are less likely to achieve the basic school grades, go to top universities. They're less hopeful about career prospects. And even things like they're less likely to become entrepreneurs. All interesting kind of findings from research that's out there from organisations like the Sutton Trust and Teach First and things like that. And also, unfortunately, I think with COVID, we know that COVID has disproportionately affected those people on low incomes, but other forms of disadvantage that intersect with low income. So women, for example, and people with disabilities, often it kind of compounds the disadvantage that we see. So I think naturally the conversation is around low income, but I think there's got to be more data generated, I think, when it comes to how does it intersect with other forms of disadvantage. And I also think we need to look at where social mobility can be addressed. So there's obviously a clear argument to focus on the home and school experience, and in many ways that sits with the government and policy. But I think employers as well also have a duty to think about how they can address social mobility. So, they can look at their own recruitment practices, for example. Are they inclusive to people from low-income backgrounds? I think Wumi was talking about this idea that being charismatic but lack discipline, which is something that I also resonate with. How can we support those students to engage with the recruitment process and level the playing field, essentially? But then also, we can also look at how people from social mobility backgrounds are looked after and supported when they're in the workplace as well. So we know it's a problem. There are different areas for us to focus on, but I think in this for this podcast, we're talking to employers and how they can make a difference, and there are obviously clear ways that we can try to make a difference in the best way that we can.
Thanks. Yeah, Kelly, what are your thoughts here? Because obviously you've got an inspiring leader at CMC. You've told us about his story. So I guess you still feel that social mobility is achievable, do you?
Yeah, look, I do. And I think this segues quite nicely on from what Jack was saying actually there about sort of how companies can better understand the benefits to their organisation when looking through a sort of social mobility lens. There's a plenty of research out there that suggests that companies that are more diverse are able to outperform other organisations because they recruit from the widest pool of talent. They're looking beyond the standard recruitment process and then going beyond and using pools of talent like Making the Leap, which CMC are very delighted to be in partnership with for the third year with Making the Leap. And in doing so, what that can really do for a company is improve customer orientation, for one. It can help with employee satisfaction. As a second thought, we also have a look at decision making and the diversification of decision making in our organisation. And that all leads to this kind of virtuous cycle of better performance for an organisation, which we recognise and we see that. Now, we're really delighted, as mentioned before, that we work with Making the Leap, and we're really delighted to have recruited individuals from the Making the Leap ACE program into our organisation. And we do see the benefits of having a really talented pool of individuals coming through that ACE program.
Lucy, let me turn to you now. You mentioned earlier about your 30th anniversary, but how has Making the Leap evolved over that time period? I mean, what do you notice about the people coming to Making the Leap now and the particular problems and challenges you are facing?
I mean, I think just building on everything that Jack and Kelly have touched on, I think there's two sides to this. So one, in terms of the young people, with the legacy of the pandemic, it's still impacting young people in terms of just their outlook and how they feel about themselves. And at those formative years, young people from less advantaged backgrounds were having even less access to the resources and opportunities that they would so really desperately need, and that has a knock-on effect that when young people are completing their education and now thinking about the world of work, they're just feeling quite different to how they would before. And we're seeing across our work with both secondary schools and young adults, more young people struggling with their confidence and self-esteem, and also sort of a lowered outlook, and just feeling that they just lack that understanding of what opportunities are available. So it's sort of around the aspirations piece that's really important. And with our ACE program, for example, we have seen an increase in demand for that over the past year, which I think is reflective of where young people are at. And then I think the current cost of living crisis as well is definitely impacting young people. We're seeing young people having to balance the need for getting any job right now just to be able to provide an income for themselves with their career aspirations and wanting to explore different career paths and get support for that. So it's a bit of a juggling act. So I think they are facing additional challenges right now. And then I think the other side of that is where organisations are at. And I think as Jack touched on, the data is pretty harsh, and it shows that we are quite stagnant with social mobility. But I think we see with our direct delivery work and our advocacy work through the UK Social Mobility Awards and through valuable partnerships like we have with PA Consulting and CMC Markets, that there's room for optimism, and that organisations are prioritising social mobility more as part of their DEI strategies and wanting to take action to address that, and whether that starts with the sort of engagement and recruitment pieces, sort of widening the gate and thinking about how they can connect with young people from less advantaged backgrounds, to then supporting them once they join the organisation, which I think is a bigger piece of work. But definitely across the board, we are seeing more organisations wanting to get involved in social mobility activity, which is positive and hopeful that will continue to support young people because they really need it more than ever.
Yeah, no, that is really positive because, as you say, that is a pretty bleak landscape that you were painting for us there in the first part of your answer. And with all these challenges that young people are facing, I'm sure your work is harder than ever. But I think everyone's touched on it so far. But Wumi, maybe you could pick up this subject about, of course, we're focusing on these individuals who drastically need our help. But what about for the companies and organizations? What are the key advantages to them to adopting this? The social mobility?
Social mobility it's a critical piece to a thriving society. And I work within the office sector. And one thing that we've seen how the way we work has dramatically changed in a post-COVID world, the way in which we work, that could be, hybrid working, remote working. And I think that's really caused a strain on companies and businesses because they've struggled with identity in those moments. And a lot of the reason, I think a lot of us, progression is important, rising up the ranks is important, but working at a company you can connect with is quite key. I think companies are battling to attract and retain talent in this job market, if they're losing out and missing out on that diversity piece. And I would generally equate it to it being as important as the ESG agenda for a lot of businesses right now. I think social mobility is right up there. And if you're not thinking about it, you're going to be in a position where you're going to have to. And I think it's natural to look at the top universities and attract talent from there. It just makes sense. If there's a Russell Group University teaching your sector the best, you want the best talent to compete the best. But definitely in my case, I didn't go to Russell Group University, nor did I even study real estate. But just through given that opportunity, I now find myself in a kind of a leading real estate business and doing quite well. So one thing we can see from a business point of view, that diversity of thought can breed innovation. And I think in this tumultuous time, it's always important to adapt. And it's the businesses that struggle to adapt that end up not actually weathering the storm or even growing in the midst of these calamities. And there's one of my favorite quotes is actually by Winston Churchill, to improve is to change, to perfect is to change often. And I think that once you have that, I would just say that backbone of diversity within your business, you'll find that you're going to constantly innovate. You're not just going to have the same ideas or the same mindset. You're constantly going to be challenged internally. And I think that will be very profitable for businesses. And finally, there's the moral code of it. I think, again, going back to how it thrives society, the impact it has on young people's lives, and not just young people's, mature adults as well. It's something that can help grow communities. Jack mentioned his story growing up, just being a young carer from a young age. Things like that help out in these situations. So I think on a moral code, it's so important. And I think when we're all, as an economy doing well, we can see brighter days, I would say.
It just seems crazy, actually, because there's a clear moral case to do it. Why wouldn't we be doing this, even if there was no other advantage at all? But obviously, there's a clear business case as well, particularly the diversity of thought, which really resonates with me. So, Jack, maybe I could turn to you. I mean, why isn't this happening then? What barriers exist to not only solving this issue, but even talking about it in the first place?
Yeah, well, I'll just add to what Wumi was saying just then. I think, I was managing the household budget and doing the weekly shop at 10 years old. So if you imagine that there are other people out there like me, think about what they can do for your business at the age of 22 or onwards. So I think there's a people from backgrounds like myself, the experience, resilience, and that they have to deal with challenges at an early age is second to none, really. But I think that this is the first time that I've talked about my social mobility experience, and I think that resonates. And I'm 36 6 now. I had to think about that. But I think it's really difficult. I think social mobility prejudice still exists, and I don't think we talk about it in the same way that we talk about other forms of diversity, for example. And I think it's because it's often invisible, and it can be uncomfortable to talk about and acknowledge. I think if you're someone who grew up in a relatively well-off household, I think you've obviously have had more access to resources, and it can be hard to acknowledge that this might have given you an advantage, and also could still put you in an advantage when it comes to the workplace today as well. And that's kind of obviously a bit of a negative conversation to have. But also, if you're from a low-income background and have defied the odds to get to where you are, then it can also be a difficult topic to navigate. So I think most of us are trying to just fit in and not other ourselves. You know, we want to be the same as everyone else in our of our colleagues, and don't really want to kind of single ourselves out. And also, I'm proud of my background, my friends, my family, and count myself really lucky to have had a supportive mum who valued education and supported my studies. But as I said, I often don't talk about my background, particularly in public. And I think also with Kelly's example with Peter Cruddas, I think he's such an incredible exception, an exceptional story of an incredible man who inspires so many people. And I'm sure that's created a great culture within CMC because of it. But I think in many other organizations, there's less acknowledgement of social mobility and less of this culture to talk about it. And actually the skills and the behaviors that you pick up from being from backgrounds like mine actually should be celebrated. So I think providing opportunities in a safe space for people to be able to be heard with different social mobility background stories, and as leaders recognizing that some people have actually overcome greater challenges to get to where they are, and it's important to discuss and champion that. And I think it should be seen as another form of diversity that could do really more. We could do more to recognize that and understand and celebrate it.
That's great to hear. That I think we all agree that the workplace is evolving, and I think we'd probably all agree that we need to listen to the young people within an organisation, because after all, they are the future of that company and society as a whole. So, Kelly, if I can come back to you, I mean, what are the young people in CMC telling you about where they want to go and what they feel about these issues?
So at CMC, we've actually started some listening groups around social mobility. As I mentioned before, we do have a number of individuals that come off the ACE programme of Making the Leap and are in our organisation. And a lot of what we want to achieve is continue that trajectory, but grow on that and develop on that. And how do we do that? That's once we have some talented individuals inside our organisation that do come from low economic backgrounds, how do we then bolster their careers inside the business? And whether that's to stay with us, or if we sadly lose them because they're so great they got opportunities elsewhere, it's our job really as an organisation to make sure that everybody that comes through our doors gets the opportunity to grow and develop and enhance their career. So what we wanted to do is, if we had, this is a difficult subject, and I agree with Jack, it is a difficult subject because there are some sensitive topics that you need to cover, and sort of your background and where you come from and the economic situation of your families, etc. It's a difficult conversation to have, and not everybody wants to talk about it. If Jack's only talking about it in his ripe old age of 30-something, 36, I think you remembered, you know, it's been a difficult conversation. It's been a difficult conversation for a lot of people. So actually, first of all, it's about building that trust inside your organisation where people do feel free and comfortable. Wumi sort of indicated sort of ESG strategies earlier in his comments. And I sit at sort of the head of sustainability, which includes the ESG agenda. It includes the diversity, equity, inclusion programme of the organisation. And it is important, but we do need to separate DE&I and social mobility. They are different, but they do intersect and they do interact. And we need to ensure that people understand the difference between the two, but also how they interact and they work together. So, you know, this does come to the point of organisations needing to have a better understanding of what social mobility is. Now, I think between us all today, we have defined that quite nicely for a lot of individuals, but actually we can talk about it here with people who know what social mobility is and what needs to happen and adjust in the organisation, but actually it's raising that awareness. So inside the organisation, I might have a poster child at the top of my organisation, but actually there are 600 plus employees in London alone that might not really have a full understanding of what socioeconomic movement is about and what needs to happen inside an organisation. And it's our job to do that, right? So raising awareness of the benefits to an organisation And this is what our, you asked me what our sort of listening groups are telling us. And one of them, one of the comments that were made is it does need to come from the top of an organisation. So whether you've got a poster child like we luckily have, or whether you have a spearheader in your organisation that's going to drive and push understanding, knowledge and education, it's a key thing that, it's a key thing that our listening groups are starting to tell us around what we should do. Now, we also came up with this kind of AAA concept, which is around action, accountability, and authenticity. So this is what our sort of listening group came to at the end of our last discussion, was actually action does need to happen with inside organizations. It should be recognized as a way to benefit a company's overall performance. And it should be a focus for an organisation, and we do need to take action. And like I said, it needs to have a spearhead at that. The accountability element it comes from that top level. Like I said, we do have that. So that sort of accountability and driving it forward from a strong voice within the organisation. And then the authenticity element of the discussion was very much around not being a tick box exercise. Social mobility should be embedded into the DNA, the culture of the organisation, and we should demonstrate that in our actions. And that authenticity, people will understand it if it comes with this kind of tick boxing approach. Actually, being embedded into the organisation's culture is really important. So, that can be demonstrated through the actions that you take. But back to a point that you're alluding to, we do have some barriers, and barriers is about data and obtaining data and getting comfortable with that. So that's where we kind of work on that trust element inside our organization. So we came up with some really good ideas and concepts of how we can move the discussions forward with our young people that have joined us from Making the Leap ACE program, which was really exciting to hear, and we're looking forward to evolving that further here at CMC.
Excellent. No, I think that AAA approach sounds brilliant. So good luck.
Graham. Yeah.
Good luck with that, and hope it continues to go well. So Lucy, maybe some practical steps that you could give us. I mean, obviously we want to, as Kelly was just alluding to there, that we're always striving to do more, to do better. What more can corporates be doing to help with these issues?
Sure. I mean, equally, I also like the AAA method, Kelly. I think that's really great. I think a lot of it, to Kelly's point, actually does start with the data, and that's something we see organizations struggle with. And I totally get it. It's a sensitive subject, and I think it's important for organizations in the first instance to understand the makeup of your staff, because it's not a one size fits all approach to tackling social mobility, and every organization has a different makeup of staff, and also at different levels in the business. So it is about, I think our general thought is to start with the data, and the Social Mobility Commission has a one question approach where there's various resources available, but the one question approach is about asking staff in a survey what the household income was when they were 14 years old, and there's various sort of levels for that, and just enabling to gather some data to just see what the sort of as a starting point to see who is in your organization, and then taking it from there, because it's important to have that strategy and have a plan in place. But I think having the data just enables you to set some targets and priorities that really fit your organization and are realistic to be able to sort of move forward. And I suppose there's two main areas. One is around engagement and recruitment. So for some organizations, that's about just widening the gate and diversifying the sort of the talent pool that you have joining your organization. And to Wumi's point, thinking about perhaps recruiting from other universities than you normally would, or raising awareness in colleges about your opportunities. And then it could also be partnering with charity organizations or other community organizations that support those young people. So it's sort of be able to be that go-between to give you access to the young people that you want. And then, as Jack touched on, the sort of recruitment processes. So just thinking about how you can make those more accessible, whether that's using anonymized recruitment processes or contextualized, to just give young people the opportunity to be able to compete. And we see a lot of young people that exactly have trod that path that Jack and Wumi have described, and are incredibly resilient and don't even necessarily see the value in their life experience, and how that has given them a huge resilience and transferable skills. And a lot of it is about employees being open to understanding those and seeing those as valuable skills, really, and examples that they can use. So it's about that engagement and recruitment. And then, of course, once people join, that retention and progression, and that could be about mentoring, targeted training programs to be able to support staff, but looking at your culture and your values and seeing, is that actually reflected throughout the organization? Is it a place where people feel that they can be themselves and they can grow and develop? And some of the things that our young people perhaps wouldn't have understanding of, that sort of social capital, the networks, just being able to fill some of those gaps for them. And to Kelly's point about having really leadership from the top, I think is really vital, because if you've got sponsorship as high as possible and it's then embedded throughout the organization, people will see that this is, the organization's serious. It means business when it comes to social mobility, and therefore it has more chance of really succeeding. And I think the last point I would say is about sharing what you're doing internally and externally, and getting involved in initiatives, getting involved in the discussion. We recently were commissioned by the Co-op to conduct research in their business to understand social mobility, and that report was published in June. So that's social mobility, inclusion and belonging at the Co-op, and that was a look at all areas of their business, and highlights of that, we were able to see what they were doing well, but also areas they needed to work on. And as a result of that, they have committed to 9 pledges publicly around social mobility. And steps like that are really great, because it shows other businesses what good looks like. But to Kelly's point, it gives the Co-op that accountability to say, look, we've made these commitments, we need to honour them. So I think taking steps like that, but then getting involved in initiatives like the Social Mobility Awards and Social Mobility Day, the Social Mobility Employer Index, and all of the resources that are available from the Commission are really great, because you can see what others are doing and celebrate what you're doing, and share that within your universe, because that will encourage others to get involved as well.
Yeah, thanks, Lucy. That's brilliant, and that's some real practical steps that I think people can look into. But Wumi, I'm interested to switch that back to your own personal story now, and think about your career progression. What have been the most helpful things along the way for you?
Yeah, so I think there'd be 3 themes I'd like to capture. One being mentoring, role models, and social capital. Lucy just mentioned that, and I think that was spot on. And to kind of piggyback off Jack's story, Jack, I think that's really impressive, by the way, and I think you've done fantastic. You'll be surprised kind of where you'll find untapped talent. And if I just go through my first story, this was actually my first step into the door into commercial real estate. My manager at the time, he actually came from a kind of a similar diverse background. I think he grew up kind of outside London, kind of very working class family, didn't actually go to university to study real estate, had kind of worked his way through sales, and now he was heading up a department. And when he saw my CV, I didn't know this till I got the job afterwards, but one of the things that captured his interest was the door-to-door fundraising I did during university, just to make a bit of money. And he just saw this as, this is somebody who has real grit, knows how to can take no but keep on going, and it takes a certain character to be able to do these type of jobs. And although I had the 1 year experience in property, albeit residential, he saw that as enough transferable skills to kind of give me the opportunity, which actually allowed me to now kind of work my way through the industry. So definitely having diversity at the top, where in leadership, which Kelly's mentioned as well, it starts at the top, will definitely trickle down that effect and seep into the DNA. Second example was when I was working at Knight Frank. There was a gentleman called Paul Modju. He headed the Race and Faith board at Knight Frank. First week in at a new company, you do feel always just out of place, and I was still kind of just working my way through the industry. And he came up to me, introduced himself, said, "I haven't seen you around." We started chatting, and through my interaction with Paul, he became a real mentor for me and introduced me to so many senior members of staff, leading up to actually meeting the CEO of the company. So it went that far. And one thing I learned is I wish I could sit here, Graham, and tell you I just worked hard, woke up at 5 a.m., went for a run and smashed it daily. That's what has helped me most of my career. The truth is, it's not just what you know, as we all know, it's who you know. And building that social capital really, really helped me. And it's that mentor, it's this, I think having good mentors is important, not just for entry level staff or young staff, but also your mature staff, because that allows them to forge those relationships. And the more people that know each other employees in different areas of the business, the more profitable your business will be, because there's that connection there. So I think there's so many benefits, and again, that it does kind of help for stickability when it comes to retention of employees and actually feeling that they're a part of something bigger.
Yeah, I love that personal touch and, that mentoring that was given to you, at such an early stage in your career. And, that's brilliant to hear that how much that has helped you. And I'm sure you owe him a lot, and you can buy him a pint next time you see him. Let's try and wrap up the conversation now, because we've had some fascinating insights for you all. Let's think about some takeaways for our audience, for our listeners today, in terms of, well, maybe the enabling factors to promoting the social mobility. I don't know who wants to kick us off with that. Maybe you could, Kelly. How about you?
We've covered a lot of these enabling factors. I look at it from an inside an organisation's perspective and what we can do and what we can achieve. And that does start very much from, that sort of talent acquisition from our side, like that recruitment process. And actually, maybe we can think about ways that we can, almost ring fence some opportunities that, a talent pool from making the leap, or from universities that are not the red brick university, etc., that we can ensure that go through our pipeline and have the same equal opportunities. There's lots of opportunities to think about this, and once inside the organization, what can we then do? Creating listening groups is a great start for us, but actually we know we can do better. We're actually we've got a mentoring program inside, but actually maybe we expand that beyond where we have it currently, and looking through a social mobility lens at that sort of mentor program, which we're hoping to work with Making the Leap on going forward, which we're really excited about. And then also creating those opportunities for networking inside the organisation. One of the things that we don't see a lot of is the confidence in individuals to build their own network, and they are our future leaders essentially. So we need to get them to feel that they are the company's future leaders, and they should have a network that starts at the grassroots. So once inside the organisation, it's actually just giving the individuals the opportunity to continue and grow and develop, and creating that pipeline of education. And then the other enabling factors is awareness. This is where we started right at the beginning, is actually raising awareness of what good talent looks like from low economic backgrounds, and what we can really achieve as an organisation, and the benefits to the organisation and to the individuals that are inside. I think there's a lot we can be doing, and there's a lot more we certainly should be doing, and we look forward to sort of evolving our relationship further with Making the Leap, and with those that are already inside the organisation, but the exciting individuals that might come down through the pipeline, which we're looking forward to.
Excellent. What about you, Jack? What do you think should be the takeaways from today's conversation?
Yeah, I think we've obviously talked about data, and I think the data shows us that there's a problem. And I think the first kind of step in addressing this is to accept that there's a problem, and that some people have less access to resources than others. And I think the word equity is really important. We often talk about equality of opportunity, but that means giving the same opportunities to everybody. And actually, what we should be doing is addressing this imbalance where some people are further behind, and we should be supporting them more than others. So I think recognizing this is really important, and this idea of leveling the playing field as much as possible is something that we should all have in the front of our minds. And I agree with Kelly in terms of as organizations, we should be creating the spaces for people to feel comfortable and confident, and providing those outlets to build communities and build that support networks, and links to with what Wumi was saying as well, in terms of finding those mentors and getting that support, a really kind of formative, particularly at the beginning of your career, which is a really formative time, and a really important juncture. Often people don't get the confidence, like myself, to speak out until much later, and could have done with that support earlier on in their career.
Wumi, is that the key takeaway from you? That support you mentioned, the superb mentorship that you had at Knights Frank. Is that the key to you creating this right culture?
Yeah, definitely. And even working for the Fellows Board. So the Fellows Board is effectively made up of those who've completed the program at Making the Leap. We're just trying to build a community for those who've actually finished the program and leveraging that social capital, because it can be challenging trying to navigate that job sphere. You've got great help from Making the Leap, but also I don't know what the experience has been for CMC Markets, but I feel like there's a lot of I met a few of your staff, and it was just amazing to see how connected they all were. They all knew each other quite well, and it clearly there's been an exchange of information that's led them to kind of still thrive and be successful in their careers. But I think the key takeaway for me is just creating the right culture in an organization, that inclusivity. Something that CBRE does really, really well. I mean, you walk on my floor, I can tell you about 10 accents you'll hear, Aussies, New Zealand, it's just from all different walks of life. And it's, I'm actually here in a polo. Some are wearing a shirt. That you're really judged by merit, not on what you look like, how you dress. It's all about coming into work and doing a good job. And I think CBRE, they've done a really good job with just creating that really good culture, and that starts from the top. Our head of department, he doesn't have a desk. He doesn't have an office. Sorry. He just hot desks around every single day. So again, just to really be at the ground and kind of see where everything's at. And I think the last comment I'd say is, for those who feel like diversity can take from you, I give you the quote that Lucy's husband told me, Gareth, who also works with the program. If we all have a bigger pie, we'll all have a bigger slice. So you don't actually have to worry about anyone taking what's yours. If we all just create a bigger pie, we can all actually benefit more.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Wumi. Thanks for all your contributions today. Lucy, I want to give the last word to you. So what are your key takeaways?
Everything everyone else said, but I think the last thing is just about having a plan. I think it is important because everyone's busy, and having, even if you have resource groups or social mobility champions, just having a plan that everyone can come back to and really just be able to look back and see, okay, what action are we doing? What is that achieving? And I think also just partnering with organizations. There's lots of fantastic charities and community organizations that are doing great work, and CMC and the PA Consulting have taken it one step further by establishing charitable foundations, which is absolutely amazing. And I take my hat off to organisations that take that step further to do that. But there's lots that businesses can do as well to be able to get involved, volunteering, fundraising, charitable donations, opening their doors to young people. I think giving them the exposure to workplaces is incredibly valuable, whether that's whilst they're in education, because that can really change their trajectory, but then once they finish education as well, and to help them access the workplace. But I think if you build a plan that's fit for your organisation, and then fill it properly, you can actually action something and really make a difference.
Brilliant. Well, that's very inspiring thoughts to finish the discussion for today. So thank you to all. Thanks to all my guests, to Wumi, to Jack, to Kelly, to Lucy. Really has been fascinating to hear what you've got to say today. So thank you all. You can find out more about the fantastic work that Lucy and her team are doing at makingtheleap.org.uk. And we always want to hear about what you think. So if you'd like to contribute to this discussion, you can do so on Facebook, Twitter, or should that be X now, LinkedIn and Instagram. The links for these can be found at the top of the page at csuitepodcast.com. You can also catch up with all of our previous shows and follow us for automatic downloads of each episode via your favorite podcast app. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, please do give us a positive rating and review. Finally, if you want to get in touch with the show, you can do that via the contact form on the website, or you can find me, Graham Barrett, and the C-Suite podcast on LinkedIn. But for now, thanks for listening and goodbye.